Hi everyone, so today I will be introducing you to a health behavior theory called the Transtheoretical model. So for a bit of background, this theory was developed by Prochaska and de Clement in the late 1970s. Their theory evolved out of studies related to comparisons of smokers who quit on their own versus those who receive professional help. It is now used in a variety of settings, including mental health and problems regarding alcohol abuse, smoking, addiction, weight control, condom use, and sunscreen use. So now looking at what it is, the Transtheoretical Theory Model, or TTM for short, is based off the belief that behavior, especially habitual behavior, occurs continuously through a cyclical process. Thus, the TTM involves 5 major stages consisting of pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. Looking in more depth at these, the pre-contemplation stage is when the individual does not realize his or her behavior is problematic, and thus there is no intention of changing this behavior within the next 6 months. The contemplation stage is when the individual begins to consider making change, planning to start within the next 6 months. The preparation stage is when the individual plans to take action within the next 30 days and may already be taking baby steps in creating change. The action stage is while the individual is making changes, typically marking the first 6 months of change. Maintenance is considered anything beyond the first 6 months of change, while the person is trying to continue on this new pattern of behavior. There is a 6th stage to this model called termination. The termination stage is not really used in health promotion though, because people making health changes are typically trying to remain in maintenance, as termination would be when the person has no desire to return to their unhealthy behaviors. So now looking at some processes, there are 10 processes that describe what people actually do to change. And these 10 processes consist of 5 cognitive and 5 behavioral processes. So first, looking at the 5 cognitive processes, we have consciousness raising, being moved emotionally, considering how one's behavior affects others, self-image, and social norms. So these processes involve basically the individual seeking out more information and better understanding the problem behavior, and they must understand how the problem behavior affects their environment and must decide that they do want to make a change. The 5 behavioral processes include making a commitment, using cues, using substitution, social support, and rewards. So these processes involve sticking to the process by finding something to replace or substitute the unhealthy behavior, and providing rewards for success. The individual must also trust and rely on others for support while making these changes. And so now looking at how this theory is used in practice, the first article that I found applied the Transtheoretical model to understand physical activity in college students in South Korea. As we know, physical inactivity has become a serious health concern globally. So this study investigated the physical activity levels of college students, as well as how the TTM constructs were associated with the stages of physical activity in college students. So this study used 598 Korean college students from one university, and each participant used the stage of physical activity change scale to determine regular physical activity and intentions. The other scales that this study used included the decisional balance scale, self-efficacy for physical activity scale, and processes of change scales. And the results of this are shown in the chart in this slide. 12.9% of participants were in the pre-contemplation stage, 18.4% in contemplation, 36.1% in preparation, 11.7% in action, and 20.9% in the maintenance stage of physical activity. The male participants were more likely to be in the action or maintenance stages of physical activity, while the female participants were more likely to be in pre-contemplation or contemplation. So from this, this obviously supported that college students were found to be quite inactive in South Korea, with over 2/3 not exercising at all, which could obviously have serious health concerns in the future. As well as Korea still remains somewhat conservative, which is why they believe that the women tended to be less active than the men in this study. but the researchers did believe that this study validated the Transtheoretical theory model, as its findings were consistent with those from prior Western research. And looking at the second application of this theory, I used a study that examined the smoking cessation behaviors of outpatients in outpatient clinics. So the study used 100 Chinese participants, and the study used a questionnaire that included the smoking awareness scale, the scale for attitude towards smoking prevention, the scale for behavioral intention to quit, the stages of changes to quit smoking, and a scale for self-efficacy in quitting smoking. And they did do some background information on these people as well, and most of them were definitely undereducated. Like, a lot of them did not finish school, and they didn't have the best jobs necessarily. So definitely it seemed like there was undereducation there, and the results of this study led to them believing that smoking cessation classes should be conducted more regularly in order to increase the awareness of smoking hazards, because 68.7% of participants were in the pre-contemplation stage, while another 10% were in the contemplation stage. So it did seem like the participants in the study were undereducated and didn't fully realize the risks involved in smoking. To find more information on this model or more studies that are occurring, you can check out what universities have posted, such as the University of Rhode Island, Boston University, or Texas A&M, as well as the National Institutes of Health has a lot of good information on it, and also has the PubMed search engine where you can find other peer-reviewed articles regarding this subject. All right, so now looking at limitations. Although this theory has proven to be successful in a variety of different settings, there are still some limitations to consider. Firstly, the Transtheoretical model fails to consider socioeconomic status or income, which can be a barrier for many people when attempting to make a health change. Secondly, the timeframes in each stage vary from person to person, so there's really no set criteria to determine what stage of the model someone is in. Like, those 6-month stages and 30-day stages could really be very different from person to person. And then lastly, there is less evidence supporting this theory's efficacy when attempting to change multiple behaviors at once, because then it just becomes even more complicated in trying to figure out what stage that person is in. So in conclusion, this theory has proven to be a good resource, and it can be used to determine how interested people are in change, and to determine whether the problem is related to education or awareness or something else, which we saw in the study for smoking cessation in the Chinese outpatients, as it seemed that they were undereducated and were not fully aware of the hazards, and that is could be why there was such a low number of participants interested in making a change. And then lastly, it can be used for a wide variety of behaviors and habits. However, just have to remember, basically, it's less effective when you're trying to change multiple problem behaviors at once. So if there's just one, it's definitely a useful theory. And then these are my references that I used.